Hello, I'm Eyal Kless, and today I'm going to answer a question regarding playing in a perpetual motion. For example, the Molto Perpetuo of Paganini, or Paganini number 5 Caprice, or anything really fast by Paganini. And in regards for what to do with pain, how to elevate stress, and I'm going to give several examples, several ways that you can help with this technique, because it's quite complicated. It involves like combination of 2 or 3 movements, and in the end, if you're patient, I will reward you with a way of practicing that is very helpful, I think, for something like that. So the question was about the Molto Perpetuo of Paganini, and the thing is that I want to say is that no matter how relaxed you are and how good your movement is and correct, if you do a movement which is long enough, for long enough, you'll get tired, because we're not machines, and even machines break. So if the Molto Perpetuum or the Paganini 5 takes 3 to 5 minutes to play, and we're practicing it for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, 7 days straight, or a month, then obviously we will need to find ways to just learn how to relax and take recuperating time. Now, that said, it's better to do the technique in the best way possible. Now, the thing about spiccato and détaché is that it involves main 3 movements, okay? The first one is the movement of the arm. So if I'm doing it from the... big movement, it involves those two muscles, this one, and is, quite a lot of work, and it's done in the top of the bow. So this is the way. Now when I go down to more jumping point, the bow will jump. By the way, it's not a bad thing. And that's a wrist movement, right? That's a wrist and finger movement. And as you see, the bow will slightly bend in the air, will not be in a straight line. Well, this is a straight line. If you watch my tip, and if you watch now, you see that it's a slightly different movement because the way our arm is constructed. Now, the thing is, if you use only that movement, either one, you'll get tired faster. The same way that if I'll keep my hand up in the air and not move for a long time, I'll get tired, while if I'll just do this, I'll get tired eventually, but the relaxing in the middle will take me longer. So what I'm saying is that like any sport movement, it's best to combine movements. And like when we throw a tennis ball, we throw it with our arm and then we snap our wrist. Or when we dribble the ball, we'll do it with our wrist and also use an arm movement. So a détaché or a spiccato can be arm oriented with a bit of wrist. Right? Or it can be wrist oriented with a bit of arm. So I look at it like 2 different circles. There's this circle here and there's this circle here. I imagine them as circles. And as I'm moving from one place to another, I'm trying to combine this to one movement. And the good thing is that I can change between those leading movements. So I can go from an arm movement to a wrist movement, to an arm movement, to a wrist movement. And you don't really hear it. If you do it well, you don't hear there's no change in the tempo, there's no change in the tone, but you are all the time using different movements, and that will take you longer to tire. Now, there's also the finger help movement, the snapping of the fingers, which is very important. That will be, you see, it's very important that all the fingers start from a bent situation and not from a straight. A very typical mistake of students will have that the fingers will be bent, but the thumb will be very straight, and then it's very hard to keep a straight bow. It's very hard to stay flexible, and usually that area becomes rigid, and this is the beginning of the end. Make sure that when you're here, when the lower part, that your thumb is bent, and when you're making the manipulating here, so you can see when you're making that kind of movement, I keep my bow as parallel as possible. Like I don't do this, I keep it as possible, and I add those movements, the finger movements, to the wrist and the arm. And there is the fourth movement, which is the entire arm. Let's call it the shoulder movement, although the muscles are behind us. It's the shoulder blades. But when I'm going from I use my arm to go from one string to the other. So, and this is very important, because if I'm using my wrist or my arm movement as I'm doing a perpetual movement, and I try to also manipulate up and down, that can lead to a lot of problems and a lot of stress. So this is important to also know how to all the time being able to move your arm to the right string. So now we have another very good way of relaxing as we play, is to use the drop of the arm. Okay, so if I do it, I'm using the drop of the arm to relax me instead of forcing it, which will make me use a lot of muscle power to hold myself up. So you use the natural way of dropping the arm in order to give you a minute moment of relaxing. Hey, this is hard. We take everything that we can take, take anything that is there, and make sure that you are not overdoing stuff. Every time you make a motion, in order to make the motion back, you need to stop the motion, the motion you did before. Physics. So basically what you want to be is you want to be exact. And the second you become bigger, you need to use more muscles and you get tired faster. In order to get more volume out, use more weight and closer to the bridge, instead of use movements, which also makes everything a bit more fuzzy. So the last thing I will say in this, quite long video, if you're still there, here's your bonus. A good way of practicing, let's take the number 5, is to do several repeated notes. Or you can do it in the last note of the group. Of course, you need to stop and relax every so often, because you're playing a lot of repeated notes, but that's a very good way of practicing fast while still maintaining control. So I hope this helps, and keep asking me questions. Peace.